This is for people who want to get their personal Blaxit on and become expats for the United States, whether you just want additional freedom in your life, you're mad or you're sad that Donald Trump may or may not be reelected by the time that this airs, or you might be mad or sad that Joe Biden's elected. I don't know the reason why, but we're glad that you're here, and we're going to be talking about everything expat. We're going to be talking about our journeys to becoming expats, and we're going to be talking about how it is actually being expats in the United States, running virtual businesses. And the person I'm here with today, who's actually the host of the show, and I'm just introducing him to the audience and to the channel, is my good friend down here in Medellin, Colombia, Ron Story Jr. Ron is a tech entrepreneur extraordinaire. He has experience buying businesses and flipping and turning those businesses and those assets into income generating assets that help him live the lifestyle that he loves down here in Colombia as well. So Ron, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for the very modest introduction. I appreciate that.
Well, I don't want to tell too much of your story, right? Because that's going to be your job, and the reason why this podcast actually exists. So, talk about, I guess, the purpose from your perspective of the personal exit plan, because this is the brand, in the name that you came up with. So, talk about where all that came from.
So back in 2014, when in August, I think it's August the 8th or something like that, 2014, I live in East St. Louis, and 10 minutes from my house, Mike Brown was shot by a cop, right? And I think about myself, I love cars, I love having nice things. And I'm like, if the police pull me over, I'm probably more likely to get shot driving my S-Class Mercedes or whatever, because I'm a black guy in their minds in the wrong neighborhood, right? And before they ask me any questions, I won't, they may just pull out a gun and shoot me. And I had to think, is this the world that I wanted to live in, right? Is there a better place? Can I go and see if black folks are treated better in other areas around the world? So at the time, one of my frat brothers, Darian, was living in Honduras, which is supposedly at the time, the most dangerous place on earth. And I said, you know what? I'm willing to take my chances there with no Spanish at all to go visit than to be able to explain myself here in English in St. Louis and still may end up dead, right? So 6 months after that happened with Mike Brown, I bought a plane ticket to fly down to San Pedro Sula, Honduras for my first international trip.
So how was that trip when you got there in terms of like the environment? Were you so thin about leaving the United States like for good, or did it take a little bit more prodding and effort to make that leap?
No, I was scared as hell.
So Honduras, in fact, is the most dangerous place in the world at that particular
it is
time.
The most dangerous place. People talk about East St. Louis and how bad it is. No, I was scared. Like I was totally traumatized. Like, no, I can't. Like my first night in the apartment, okay, so my friend Darian is a school teacher. So they had a fancy, secluded neighborhood that all the American teachers lived in, and they had guards. And when we arrived from the airport, they knocked, doom, doom, doom. We had to knock on the gate to get them to open. Instead of saying, who is it? They stuck a 12-gauge shotgun through the hole, and then they opened the one where they could look out. And I'm like, oh, wow. Where am I at?
Yeah.
The next morning, all the teachers were gone to go to school, to go to work. Well, I work from home, so I'm in the apartment, and the guards are doing the patrols. So they see me in the kitchen cooking. The guy just puts up his shotgun at me, and I drop my plate of eggs and everything. And I'm like, I don't speak Spanish, so I didn't know what to say to him, right? And I'm like shaking. And the other guard who was there from the night before said, oh, no, he's fine. He was here. He came in last night. He's staying here. He's going to be living here. But the new guard didn't know that I was staying there. So that was my introduction to San Pedro Sula, about to get shot twice. I leave to avoid getting shot by the real cops.
That's how I was going to say the irony of the situation. So you had so much fear of being shot by the cops in the United States, and you're almost shot by the cops.
Yeah, by the rent-a-cops. They're not even real cops.
So rent-a-cops in Honduras.
Yeah, but that was my first day in Honduras. I stayed there for about 3 weeks because I just couldn't live the lifestyle. But I'll tell you the logic of me going there. It was that I always have this fear of if I don't know how to do something, I want to go to the extreme first, and then I can ease my way back. So if I just face the worst situation, then when I go to other places, it won't be that bad. So I went from being in Honduras for about 3 weeks to hopping on a bus, going through Nicaragua, all the way to Costa Rica, which is considered to be the safest place in Central America, right?
Mhm.
So I ended up going from Honduras, the worst or most dangerous, supposedly, to um, San Jose, Costa Rica, which is one of the safest places in Central America, and that's when the journey really, started to take hold. That this is something that I can do with confidence, even with no Spanish at the time. I felt comfortable that I wouldn't be in bad shape.
Yeah. So San Jose, Costa Rica. How long were you in San Jose?
So I was in San Jose for about 2 months before one of my business partners tragically had an aneurysm and died, and I came back to the States
Mm.
at that time.
Got it, got it. But if it wasn't for that, you would have just been gone. You think just after San Jose, or do you think you would have eventually went back to the United States?
Well, I mean, I had a lot to learn. Again, this is 2015. I had to meet new friends. They didn't speak English. I didn't speak Spanish. So I was still learning, right? I came back to the US um, for about a year to kind of reset and to get everything straightened out business wise, and to reset my business and think about a different direction. Um, and then I went to the Dominican Republic. Darian at the time had switched schools, and I'm like, dude, if you go to a different country, I'm gonna meet you there. So I ended up moving to Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, for about 6 months, and ever since then, every year I've spent at least 6 months out of the country. I come back to visit my family, but I've spent at least 6 months out of the country living in other countries.
Yeah, man, that's dope. I think that's excellent, and I always like thinking about your story, and also Darian is one of my friends too, and he's down here in Colombia as well. He's a VP or vice principal at one of the prestigious schools in Colombia, and you all took different paths to actually travel the world.
Mhm.
He did it through education, right? In terms of teaching at different high schools and middle schools and that type of thing around Central and South America. But you did it through entrepreneurship as well. So can you talk about that a little bit in regards to? I know Darian's Spanish is much better than yours and mine, but you have a lot more free time than he does. It seems like.
Well,
So
well,
talk about that a little bit.
that's interesting because Darian and I, we both, when we were like, yo, man, let's go. What about living around the world, right? And we both bought Rosetta Stone at the same time because he had lived in Costa Rica before, right? And he did like a homestay in Costa Rica, but we both put in $150 and we bought Rosetta Stone. And it was teaching us dumb stuff like the boy sits on top of the airplane. Like when?
Yeah.
When will I ever say that? Right? Apple is under the tire. I don't live on an orchard. I'll never use these words. What happened is that by him going and having to live in those countries, his Spanish improved more rapidly,
Mhm.
right? And I'm back in the States and I ain't even thinking about Spanish at all, right? But as he's living there, he's being totally immersed, right? But he took the path of being able to see the world through his career. So everybody always thinks, well, I don't have a business, so I can't go. But you have a career. Now with COVID, everybody can work remotely most of the time. So that excuse of not being able to go because I have a job has pretty much been eliminated for almost everybody. You don't have to be a high school administrator or, teach economics or whatever he teaches, or whatever he was teaching in the past in order to travel. You can take your regular job and find a way to do it. And my traveling was inspired by the 4 Hour Work Week. That was a book I had bought back in 2007. And I'm like, holy crap, you can build an online business and live anywhere. And one of the things that always stuck with me was most people say that they want $1 million. But in reality, they want the lifestyle that they think they would be able to live if they had $1 million.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, I get it. You don't need the $1 million. You just need the income coming in that allows you to live whatever freedom lifestyle you want. Well, I don't spend a bunch of money, so I never needed the $1 million. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yeah, no, I was going to say exactly. And, that was the book that inspired me too, because That's still one of my top 5 favorite books of all time. And
Mhm.
I had to be one of the first readers of that book because I bought it as soon as it came out in
Mhm.
2007 as well. And at that time, I had just graduated from the University of Louisville, and my degree was in engineering, so electrical engineering. And if you were to ask me to wire any type of circuit or create any type of circuit design or circuit board now, or even back in 2006 when I graduated, I couldn't help you. I mean, I just couldn't do it, right? So, that wasn't really the career path for me. And the way that I got into entrepreneurship was, in college, I did a couple of programs. One at a Harvard Business School called a Summer Venture and Management Program back in 2004. And then the year after that, I did a summer program at Carnegie Mellon University called PPIA, which is a Public Policy and International Affairs Fellowship. And I thought, like, by that point, I had known I was either going to switch into business or go into politics, right? And engineering was no longer going to be my path. But at that time, Boyce, his career started to blow up a little bit. He had just written a couple books about, getting into college and how to succeed, once you get into college. And he also wrote a book called "What If George Bush Were a Black Man," which was, very controversial, which was getting him on a lot of different national television shows at that particular time. And because of like that early success, and I had a mentor in Louisville. His name was Mr. Brazeley, so Carl Brazeley. He used to play professional football in Canada, but then after that, he became a successful entrepreneur within the city of Louisville, and he's the one who initially started to get me think about entrepreneurship. But when I was graduating, I had job opportunities from places like Ford and General Electric and some other places as well. But my mind and my body and my spirit was just telling me about entrepreneurship. And luckily, I had a brother that was kind of already going down that pathway. So he proposed the idea when I was a senior in college that, why don't you turn down your corporate job offers and move up here to Syracuse, New York to help me build my professional speaking empire, right? And just help me get booked for speaking gigs, help me get booked on national television, those types of things. But through that process, like I said, I didn't know anything about business, for the most part. I mean, I know a little bit, but not about being an entrepreneur. So I had to learn every day, every night, do stuff every day, and then just reflect on what I was learning, so that I could be, ready for the next day. And one of the books, in my most favorite book that I came across of, was The 4 Hour Work Week, because I was looking to see how to just streamline my life, because I've always been a systematic, type of thinker,
Mhm.
right? But that book changed my life, and that phrase that you mentioned before is a phrase that just always stuck with me, right? In terms of, most people don't want to be millionaires; they just want to live the life that they think millionaires actually lead. And I maybe had that on my wall, but I had a lot of stuff from 4 Hour Work Week on my wall. But to that point, from 2007 until I graduated business school, I went back to school at Cornell for my MBA. But those 3 years, like, that quote just really stuck out to me, and just the 4 hour work week in general stuck out to me. So when I graduated from B school, instead of like going back into my business in a particular city in the United States, I left and moved to the Dominican Republic for a little bit, and then came back once again to start another venture. But like, that long term idea, that long term desire to want to live abroad was still there. And my journey once again started in, I guess, a little after yours, with the second time, with a family, actually, with a wife, not a daughter yet, but just a wife at that time. And we decided to travel for a while before we actually eventually ended up here in Colombia. But that's a little bit about my story, and just, I guess, the impact of the 4 hour work week. If you talk to many expats and many like digital nomads and that type of thing, the 4 hour work week was like the beginning of their journey, it seems like.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree. One of the things about that $1 million thing, my background before I got into software in 2012 was in the insurance and financial services business. So I was a financial advisor, and I managed a gang of agents in Illinois and Iowa for a large top 3 insurance company in the States. And what you learn as a financial advisor is about asset management. And what I learned is that the most people who want to be a millionaire, I see how they become broke, because they're going to spend that $1 million. They don't see the $1 million as an asset that's going to spin off income. They see it as, I got $1 million, I'm going to spend it, right? And we see that with our athletes. They get a big check and they spend it, right? They don't live off the interest, right? But what I understood when I read Tim's book was that I could build an asset that would have the value of $1 million. It may not be $1 million in the bank, but if it's throwing me off $60,000 a year to live off of, that would be equivalent to having $1 million at 6% interest, right? Or $2 million at 3% interest, right? But I have this asset that I could later trade in, right? So that's how I look at the businesses that I've built, or the businesses that I'm still building now. I look at them as ATMs that are going to spin off income once they're at their potential, right? And that income allows me to live the lifestyle. I don't need to sell the business, and to do that, I can keep the business and keep generating that income and that cash flow. So anyone who's listening, I think that's the method. It's how do you replace your income, not how do you get $1 million. So if you're making 10 grand a month, but you think you can live in Colombia for three grand a month, all you need to do is generate something that could give you 3 grand a month, right? And 3 grand a month is a lot. So part of my exit plan was to go to what Tim described as places that gave you financial arbitrage, right? So I can make dollars in the United States, but I can spend pesos in Colombia, or lempiras in Honduras, or whatever, right? So because the cost of living in those economies are totally different. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. And let's dig into the details a little bit on that. So, of course, I live here in Medellin too. One of my most liked, I guess, post or most engaged post of 2019 was when I posted about my expenses living down here in Colombia, in terms of living on pesos instead of paying United States dollars, right? And I always talk about how I live a upper middle class lifestyle, here for basically a lower middle class rate of money. You know what I mean? So my total budget, and I'm living large down here in Medellin, not too large. I don't want nobody coming after me, but I live nice. I live well with my wife and my daughter. And my total budget is $3,000 a month, right? And I'm probably even overpaying for certain things. And through that, what I get is, let's see, my rent is about 3 million pesos, or 3.1 million. I can't remember what the number is now, but about $900, and that's for a 3-bedroom, 4-bath apartment in one of the nicest areas of town with an excellent view of the city. Let's see, my health insurance for my entire family is about $300, so $100 per person. Since the dollar is strong and the peso is a little weaker right now, that's even dropping down to like $260 a month. What else? I have a nanny. She comes for 5 hours a day, 6 hours a day now. So from 9 to 3, 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. And that costs me about $500-$600 a month or something like that. Food, we have a chef that prepares our lunch and our dinner every day. That's another 1.5 million pesos. So that's another, $500, $450 for the month. And then let's see, a housekeeper that comes once a week. She used to come twice, but we don't like having people in the house during COVID like that. So she comes once a week now. And that is $20-$25 every time that she comes as well, right? And those are most of our major expenses. And I haven't maybe not even broke $2,000 yet. I'm not even exactly sure. But then we have another amount of money to just expenses, entertainment, whatever we want to do, with it as well. So, that's like a real life example of, living on pesos while, earning dollars. So what does your budget look like in terms of where are you spending your money within Colombia?
No, I think that's my lifestyle is very similar to yours. You've been to my house, we kind of have the same thing. I mean, I have someone that comes in and takes care of the house. I used to have someone that cooks for me, but I got rid of them. But I don't have any kids. So I don't have any nannies or anything, but I chose to, since I work from home all day, I chose to get a more elaborate apartment than what I needed. Right. So, my apartment is a bit outrageous to some extremes for Colombian standards, but it's okay for me because I want to pay a little bit more. So he pays 3 million for 3 bedrooms. I pay 3 million for a 1-bedroom. Right. Because it's just set up a little bit differently. Right. But it's still in great neighborhoods. The way I like to think about it so that people don't think, they always say, how much is a dollar worth there? A dollar's worth $1, right? But let me give you the best example of it. If you lived in Manhattan, New York, and you made $40,000 a year, you would be barely making it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you live in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and you made $40,000 a year, you're middle class and you're doing okay, right? So, but we don't call the people who live in Tuscaloosa, poor because they only make 40 grand and they live in Alabama, or they only spend 40 grand a year. But in New York, that dollar doesn't go that far, right? So because the cost of living is different. So the way to think about it is, people in Colombia, they're not poor, right? By Colombian standards, they got malls, they got all the same stuff we got.
Nicer, way nicer malls than we have in the United States.
Better, nicer malls, better. My apartment here would cost me $3,000 a month in the States with no furniture, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm getting it for $700 a month, fully furnished with all the utilities, right? So when I put that in perspective, it's like, well, people think, well, for that much, it must be, it's run down. No. It's no different than if you went to Tuscaloosa in Manhattan. You see the $6,000 apartment in Manhattan, you like, we get that for $500 in Alabama.
This is easily the nicest place I've ever lived in terms of where I live now. And when you factor in like perfect weather every day, even though it's about to rain right now, but perfect weather most days, down here in Colombia.
Yeah. So
go ahead. I'm sorry.
So when you're thinking about living wherever you are, the idea behind the personal exit plan is not to tell you to come to Medellin or to go to Costa Rica. It's to go wherever you feel you're going to be treated best, right? So that may mean taking your job from New York and moving back home to Alabama if that's where you're from. But now you're making the $300,000 in New York, but you're only spending whatever you need to spend in Alabama, right? A lot of people that work for Facebook and Google in Silicon Valley, they're leaving because of COVID. They're going to the Midwest, to Colorado, to, Joe Rogan just moved down to Dallas, Texas, because they're avoiding the taxes. But now with this mobile virtual lifestyle, you can make the same money in California, but live in Iowa, right? Yep. You can avoid a lot of the taxes and keep your same, actually improve your standard of living just by having a personal exit plan. Like, what's my plan to exit the BS where I'm going to be treated best financially, as a person, humanitarian wise, and how can I help the most people? So that's what the idea behind the personal exit plan is.
Let's go deeper into that. And I like you mentioning, go where you're treated best, because I believe Andrew Henderson over at Nomad Capitalist, he says that often, right? Yeah. He's, quite a bit more.
He's had an effect on me too, man.
Oh yeah, huh? What'd you say?
I said he's had an effect on me too, man. Capitalist is one of my favorite channels,
It is one of my favorite channels. Yeah, I hope to meet Andrew one day. He comes across as such a, I don't know what to call it, but he provides such excellent information, man. And
I think he has apartments in Bogota. He has apartments here in Bogota.
Oh yeah, I think he mentioned that. I think
one of his trifecta cities is one of his trifecta countries is Colombia.
Colombia, so. It is, definitely Colombia. But anyway, back to this idea of a personal exit plan, right? What would you say to people who talk about leaving the United States, and it's like, how can you leave your people? Or, I'm down for fighting the cause. Or let's say I post something on Facebook about like politics in the United States or something like that. They said, what do you know about it? You don't even live here anymore. Like, I get that comment, every so often. Mm-hmm. So what do you say to people who like think and talk like that?
Well, again, I think the idea is what we said, go where you're treated best, right? And I think that the idea is everybody has to fight their own war. In the Bible, they say, you got to bear your own cross or whatever. That's what all the Christians say. Pick up your own cross. You got to bear your own cross, right? Well, I don't think I'm a very good protester, but I'm a very good example of economic freedom, right? I'm a very good example of liberty. So everybody in the military, they have the Coast Guard, they have the Navy, they have the Air Force, the Marines, the Army. They all fight differently, right? So the protesters have their fight. The Black Lives Matter people, the people who want to stay and rebuild their own hometowns, they're just different parts of the army, right? I'm just over here. I'm the one that said, I'm with the Air Force. I'm going to buy a ticket and leave, right? I'm going to go live somewhere else because it's easier for me to pay $400 to go move somewhere else and enjoy the last half of my life versus trying to fight a police reform system because I don't have the skills or the patience to do that. So for everybody who wants to do that, I am here to help you and encourage you. I got your back, right? But for those of us who say, no, let's go somewhere else. Imagine if 10,000 people left Chicago, 10,000 people that made 100 grand, they picked up and they left Chicago, but they kept their jobs in Chicago, right? And they went to Barbados. They all make 100 grand. You know what that would do to that Black economy? It would blow it up. If they all went down to Belize or they went to the Bahamas, we can support Black folks. We can go where they love Black people, right? So we don't have to stay there. That's all that I'm saying is, hey, there's different methods of fighting. Some people want to use the old British stand in line and march. That's kind of how I think about protesting. It's the old British formation fighting. No, I'm doing guerrilla warfare. We're going to be going from different places. We're not going to, go where you can be treated best. Think about what that would do to the economy of Chicago or St. Louis or DC if 10,000 Black folks left and went down to the Bahamas. But we kept our jobs. That's 10,000 vacant houses. That's less police that need jobs, right? They can have whatever utopia they want since they think we're the worst. Let's leave and go build our own places down in other countries that are primarily Black.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit more because I think some people may be listening and they're thinking this is not realistic. Lawrence and Ron are like living an extremely privileged life that's not going to be available for 99% of Black Americans. So we would like to leave. But our job just can't be transferred that easily. I'm a dentist, I can't leave and move to another country, or I'm an XYZ, I'm a nurse, I'm a firefighter, or whatever it might be in terms of I'm a construction worker that you actually have to be at your particular location. So, try to, I guess, bring that back to me in terms of, filling that gap in my head in terms of like, what would you might say to those types of people?
So, I mean, there are sacrifices that had to be made, right? I have to sacrifice being able to buy the iPhone 2 months later because they don't come to Colombia right away. I gotta pay 18% tax on every electronic device that I ever buy, right? Those are jokes. But what I'm saying is you have to find out what battles you're willing to fight, right? If you want to keep the house that you bought and have the 10,000 square foot house or whatever, then you can come and do that some other place, but you got to let that house go. You got to pour something out of the cup in order to put something else into it. Right. So you have to pick and choose your battles. That's all that I'm saying. I don't think we're living privileged lifestyles. I think that we've made sacrifices on one side in order to take advantage of an arbitrage on the other side. And everybody can do that in a small way. Here's all I would say. Most of us don't even have passports. So we're imagining what it's going to be like to live in Barbados or the Bahamas. We ain't even got the tools, the $120 tool necessary to even try it out for a weekend. First step is get a passport, right? So that you have the option that if everything goes to poop, you can go somewhere else, right? So that's the first step that I would say. Get a passport and go see what other places look like. The second thing is when you go visit those places, the first few days, stay in a hotel. So you can get comfortable, but then venture outside of that resort area. I used to hear people tell me they were coming down to the DR. And yeah, we're going to Punta Cana. Well, you could have just went to Miami because it is just like being in Miami. You're on a resort, you're closed in, you don't get to see the DR at all, right? Mm-hmm. So venture out to see what the culture's like so that you can beat those big bad wolves. That's what I did when I went to Honduras. I had to get over the big bad wolf of somebody's going to kidnap me and cut my head off and sell me back to Obama. Well, that wasn't going to happen.
Well, it sounded like that might be possible. Police, the rent-a-cops were pulling guns on you over there.
Well, but the rent-a-cops was protecting the properties that were there, right? So they were just doing their job, which I don't think that they did anything wrong, right?
Yeah. Can you count for the cops though if they're carrying just full on 12-gauge shotguns though?
Well, I mean, anyway, that's all security guards, right? I mean,
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that is one of the biggest things that I've noticed being down here is, these Brinks guards and all the other types of guards. They be having their guns out, man, when they're collecting cash.
Yeah,
and that type of stuff.
They don't carry pistols either.
No, they carry shotguns.
They gonna get you. They go. Yeah. It's got a big spread.
They got spread, as Bill Burr says. Got the spread over here. But no, that's interesting. Let's go ahead and wrap up.
Okay. But
Because
did, did that make sense? The basic steps of get a passport just to see if this could be a part of your plan, right? See if it may be going to a different state, but it may be leaving the country, right? Using your virtual COVID pass now that everybody can work remotely. Or if you want to try to start a business, well, that's why they have the Black Business School, right? The Black Business School can teach you investing, how you can make dividends on your money, how you can start different types of businesses. So there's options out there for us. I just want to bring those options to people to their doorstep where they can ask questions, right? We want to have a question and answer show where they can ask questions. We answer those questions from a perspective of a career-based person like Darian and entrepreneurs like you and I, right? That's the idea behind the personal exit plan. And you don't have to leave the country to have an exit plan.
Yeah, and that was going to be my final question to you is, tell us what can we expect from this personal exit plan podcast. So you talked about the purpose, but what types of topics, what can we expect as viewers and listeners to understand and learn from listening to your podcast?
So what we're going to be talking about, one of the main things is we're going to be interviewing people that have done it, right? I'm a big person. I don't like to talk about things I haven't done. So I have friends that live all over the world in Africa, Asia, Europe, US, Central America, South America, Australia. And I'm going to be reaching out to them to tell their stories on how they exited. And it doesn't have to be because of a malice reason like mine, where I was trying to get away from the police. Some people just want to go where they're treated best, like the nomad capitalist says. So that's one of the things we're going to be doing. But then we're going to also be answering questions directly, what I call questions that we take for granted. Like, how do you learn Spanish, or how do you survive when you don't know Spanish? Well, most people don't even know that Google Translate exists, right? So talking about the tools and the equipment that we use in order to survive, mainly our smartphones, right? I survived for 3 years speaking no Spanish, just using Google Translate and AirPods, right? I would give one person an AirPod, I would keep the other one. She would talk to me in Spanish. Google would translate it. I would talk to her back in English. It would translate it to Spanish with her. We're going to teach you little tips like that. How do you find safe neighborhoods? How do you meet friends, right? I met Lawrence here in Medellin, but there's a whole community of entrepreneurs that are here. And how do we meet each other? And how do we get to know each other, right? Other expats. So those are the things we're going to be covering. And then we're going to try to give you some tools on, if you want to be an entrepreneur, how do you start that business to give you that freedom? If you want to take the career path route, Darian will tell you about how to get job fairs, go to job fairs and find international job fairs in your different career, because that's what he's been good at. I don't know that stuff. So we're going to bring him in to talk about the career-based exit plan, because he's been gone. I mean, he's lived in 12 countries or so, right? But he's done it based on his career, not from the perspective of an entrepreneur or a hustler like myself.
Gotcha, man. Well, I'm excited about this, and I'm so excited that you're here because although I love living the expat lifestyle, I love raising my family and having my family down here with me. This isn't actually something that I talk about very often in terms of how I did it. I find, things like, Claude Anderson, Powernomics, a little bit more entertaining and interesting for me personally, but we have someone who is more of an expert than I'm even at this type of thing with Ron down here to really share his experiences and the experiences of his friends and our friends as it relates to, living the expat type of lifestyle and how he's gotten to this point and how they've gotten to this point as well. Let us know what you think about the Personal Exit Plan podcast. This is, like I said, a pilot, and the more comments, the more likes, the more shares that I see of this, the more likely we are to continue to have Ron, do this type of content. So let us know what you think. Please, before you get out of here, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And Ron, do you have any closing thoughts before we leave?
In the comments, put where you want to go, right? I'm going to be reading through the comments. Where would you like to go? If you could move anywhere and work and live, where would that be? Right? Because I want to get people from my friends from those countries to interview them to tell you what their experiences are like. And then also in the comments, when you put where you want to go, next to it, put what's your biggest fear or what's holding you back, right? Because that's the feedback we need. That's where we're going to generate our questions and know what to cover for you. We did a survey of maybe 600 people so far. And we got all types of answers of what's holding people back, where they would go. But we want more of your feedback. If you weren't a part of that survey that Lauren sent out, go ahead and put that in the comment section, and I'll be going through that, and we'll be sure to cover those answers in the episodes.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, Ron, thanks so much for your time today. So, please make sure, like I said, you like, share, and subscribe. The Personal Exit Plan, a new podcast from Ron Story Jr. This is the pilot episode. So, on behalf of Ron, my name is Lawrence Watkins. You all take care, be blessed, and have a wonderful day. All right, bye-bye.